Hi all. There's an absolutely amazing game that was played at the Qatar Masters. Alisher Suleymenov, who is just a recent Grandmaster, just above 2500 FIDE rating, is white against Magnus Carlsen. So this is round 2 in the Qatar Masters Open. So d4 is played by Suleymenov. We have knight f6, c4, e6. So wanting to play perhaps a Nimzo Indian. If knight c3, then bishop b4 perhaps is what Magnus Carlsen would have played. But we have here Queen's Indian territory, knight f3. We have b6, a3, bishop a6. So queen c2 protecting the pawn on c4. The bishop drops back. Okay, securing the e4 square against white playing e4. Okay, knight c3. And now c5, so hitting d4. We have e4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop c5. And now actually the knight just goes back to f3. This is already quite tactically interesting. So Magnus Carlsen here played knight c6. In fact, it does seem knight g4 could actually be a rather decent move. Let's say h3, and this is really weird and wonderful. So here, black really doesn't want to play bishop takes f2 check because it's like pieces hanging here. So let's imagine knight takes f2. There is rook h2, and this is just actually a really interesting position in its own right. f5, b4, and here let's go with knight takes e4. This could be a situation which perhaps needs to be evaluated if black's going to play like this. Overall, engine suggests this might be about equal. It's funny stuff. So knight g4 it's a razor sharp move to have the knight kind of trapped there, but to play f5 after. If white had played e takes, then there's actually queen c7 is interesting because there's an idea here of potentially bishop takes f3 and queen takes h2. So this is interesting as well, this position. So here queen takes h2 might actually be a small edge for white after all of this though. If g takes f3, instead of queen takes h2, queen e5 check is strong here, and then queen takes h2. Okay, but it's fascinating stuff that knight g4 could actually be potentially playable. It's something to bear in mind. Okay, so anyway, knight c6 though, Magnus Carlsen doesn't want to get into that. We have b4. The problem is, yeah, the bishop's driven back, and it gives white this nice square for the bishop with tempo on b2. So out of the opening, white seems kind of comfortable here now. So black castles, bishop e2, d6. So it's kind of hedgehog pawn structure, especially if a6 is played. This is like a prickly hedgehog structure. White castles now. We have rook c8, rook f e1. So this looks like harmonious, pieces. Bishops are quite good. The knight's good. Everything's quite good and well placed. We have bishop f8, bishop f1. That does seem sensible as well. Knight e7. Now things take a very interesting turn here, to say the least. There's a kind of, now that the pieces are kind of optimal, there's this forcing move, knight b5, asking Magnus Carlsen what to do about d6. And Magnus Carlsen chooses knight e8. It seems knight g6 might have been the way to go. This might actually be the best thing that black can do. If white really wants to double the pawns, okay, white loses the bishop here. And even though technically engines might suggest white is better, there's some, it's kind of a bit double-edged perhaps. Maybe this bishop becomes alive later, on a good day at least. So knight g6, yeah, was interesting, but we have knight e8, and it's funny, this move takes away protection from h7. It's an important guard of h7. The game gets super tactical now after knight e8. This kind of weakening of h2. A lot of the major tactical motifs in chess are to do with key defenders, if we think about it. when we think about capturing, often we're removing a defender, deflecting a defender, interruption, interference, interfering with a defender. A lot of great tactics and combinations are to do with defenders, but here it's like volunteering to remove the defender away from h7, which is why, knight g6 might have actually been, it's definitely the more theoretically correct move. And here, guess what white plays now? And it really is getting super dangerous after this. Okay, white plays now knight g5, just looking at that kind of weakness of the last move that's been created by neglecting h7. And it's actually rather difficult here. It's amazingly so. We have knight g6. So what would happen if h6? Funny enough here, this is crazy stuff. There's e5 threatening checkmate. H takes, and now e takes d6. And the pawn's going to be winning back material, either with taking or d7. It's going to be winning back material, and it's also opened up the bishop. And if we look at the resulting position here, this is definitely in white's favour. Just to help evaluate this position, if we slip in rook e3, we've got the potential for rook h3. So this is a really dangerous situation which is emerging, because black's king safety has been compromised. And for example, knight c6, bishop takes f6. This stuff is just basically in white's favour. So that's with the move h6. It does seem to be the case that e5 is super dangerous. Just one example. But knight g6 is played, and now we have e5 anyway. Okay, so if knight takes e5, then checkmate. If d takes e5, then bishop takes e5 and winning material. Ouch, just winning a piece. So okay, d5 is played here, but actually you might be evaluating this position on general grounds, but actually there's forcing moves here which are kind of vicious, which give a much more accurate evaluation. It seems this next move is very, very strong. Can you see what it is for 100 points? Very, very strong move indeed. Okay, queen b3. It actually means that queen h3 is on the cards. And also this diagonal is under pressure. We have bishop e7. So the funny thing is here, let's say a6, queen h3, h6. Guess what white could play here? This is crazy stuff. Yeah, with both knights attacked in this variation, knight takes f7. Now, if king takes f7, knight d4, and how does black actually protect e6? It starts to get a bit tricky. Okay, there are moves like knight c7, but it's just really super dangerous. Let's just say knight f4, queen g4. This way of playing it, it just ends up being better for white. These variations show, white's clearly better here. And if a takes b5, queen takes e6 is a no-go area. These pieces all over here, away from the king, the king's in big trouble in this situation. This is just nasty, the situation which emerges here. It's just a crushing situation where king's safety has gone to zero and black gets checkmated. So yes, on queen b3 it's difficult to me. If f6, knight takes e6, if h6, this would be a similar pattern to what happened in the game, with this diagonal becoming dangerous. Okay, so let's just look at the game continuation to get insight there. So queen b3, bishop e7 is played. So now, in the game, so you can maybe guess what is played here. The queen was quite versatile. It was threatening to switch into h3, but it is also pressurizing the diagonal. So yes, knight takes f7. This is truly vicious. So the king took. If d takes c4, bishop takes c4, say black plays like this with king takes, there's knight d6 check here, funny enough. And it's too dangerous to play king g8, allowing queen takes e6. Let's say knight takes, e takes. This situation, queen takes, c8, d takes. White's just material up here. This is just the exchange up. This is much better for white. So king takes f7 is played. C takes d5, bishop takes d5. And now guess what? Yeah, rook takes d5. Look at black's pieces on the queen side. This intuitively, even if we couldn't calculate all to the end, it looks intuitively as though the number of attacking pieces against the number of defending pieces is a key intuitive consideration. And we have this cute little move knight d4 now, so the knight can pop into e6 potentially. Knight f4 defending against knight e6. If b5, knight e6 check, here we can actually, knight d8 check can lead to just checkmating. Yeah, it's quite vicious. And if knight c7, queen f3 check, and here, funny enough, knight c6 is crushing, hitting the queen. The tactics are just amazing, and that would be like winning the queen. So knight f4 is tried. We have queen f3, king g8. If g5, g3, just simply g3 to get material back, and all that damage around the king, it's terrible. So king g8, queen takes f4, queen b7, knight f5, and now b5. This is a really hopeless position for black. Guess what white plays here? Yeah, the queen's overloaded. Bishop takes b5. The queen has to protect e7. We have bishop f8. So yes, if queen takes b5, as well as taking the bishop, it's checkmate after. So bishop f8. But now, yeah, the bishop's actually won access to c4 by taking out that pawn. Bishop c4 check. Here, knight h6. So at move 31, Magnus Carlsen resigned here. Yeah, this is a real shocking game. It's an amazing game by Alisher. And let's see if, you know, queen e7, what would happen. So let's carry on just out of interest here. Just to be clear, knight f7 check. The bishop could retreat, first of all. Okay, and if we have this position, let's imagine we have this position, knight g5 check, king h8. There's a very strong plan here to further destroy black's king safety. Can you see what it is? Yeah, it will be h4. This is really a crushing idea for h5. So if, let's say knight g7 isn't played, say a5, h5. This is just one scenario where even if we lost the bishop, this bishop is enough to be winning here. Off the check, bishop takes g7, g takes h7 check. The black king gets mated. And if knight g7, trying to stop h5, knight f7 check, king g8, we can improve things here. We don't have to have a repetition, just e6, and then we get in h5, and this is the final nail on black's king safety. Coffin here, queen e5, then knight f5, and we've got h6 coming. So here, queen f6, this is very, very convincing now. Yeah. So there are crushing plans with the h-pawn. Just in case you're wondering here, just retract the bishop and then start to put real pressure on black's king if needed, with the h-pawn if needed. Yeah. It's a truly vicious game. And, maybe unfortunately Magnus tweeted about something related to the game. The opponent was wearing a kind of analog watch, and he tried to clarify he wasn't making any insinuations, but unfortunately it's been blown up in the chess world a bit in terms of the safety around events. But it was just, an analog watch. I think in the FIDE rules they talk about watches, but they're not specific when they talk about watches. They should really perhaps talk about digital watches, not analog watches. So there's a certain amount of paranoia going on in chess, it seems, nowadays. And it makes me wonder, if people did go back into chess and played a brilliant game, how much suspicion would be raised, if they beat someone, much higher rated. If I went back and played FIDE rated games in the current climate, it seems like a controversial climate, unfortunately, is being created in the chess world in recent months. So that's an unfortunate aspect to this game. I didn't really want to distract talking about that too much. But just to say, I feel there is something I have felt for several months since the Hans Niemann incident, is that what should be a fantastic day in someone's life, if someone beats the world champion, you'd think it should be a fantastic day. But perhaps if one is not humble and kind of bragging and putting the opponent down, then it doesn't become a fantastic day. The whole thing can become quickly a horror story. I think that's one lesson, that if you do beat someone much higher rated, to be extremely humble about it. And when Magnus Carlsen loses to certain players who are low rated, I think the more humble they are generally and nice, the nicer Magnus Carlsen is to accept that. On this occasion, the opponent really didn't do much apart from fidgeting with this analog watch, it seems, from videos that I've seen. Okay, quite a bit. But if the FIDE regulations may need a bit more precision when they talk about not having watches, do they mean analog and digital? So anyway, so there's that controversy which kind of erupted for a bit on Reddit, as far as I can see, and probably Twitter, caused by Twitter. So that's a shame. It should be a cause of celebration in general. If you beat someone higher rated, it shouldn't be like this major controversy. And I just thought it is actually an absolutely brilliant tactical masterpiece. So I want to end on this note. This is one of the greatest tactical masterpieces I've seen against Magnus Carlsen played, in recent years, and from a new grandmaster. Really great applause to Alisher Suleymenov. Okay, thanks very much.